What's up, YouTube? What's going on with you guys, man? What's up? What's up? What's up? It's your boy Darren, man. I'm the Bowtie Fragrance Guy on the channel where we focus on the two F's, fragrances as well as fashion. So if you love fashion-related content, if you love fragrances, then I think you're going to enjoy the content on this channel. Why don't you consider going ahead and clicking on that subscribe button? And if you don't mind, take another quick second to make sure you tap the bell icon to ensure you get notified when I upload new content on the channel. So guys, you see the title of today's video. I'm going to be talking about 10 more fragrances in my collection that I consider to be masterpiece fragrances. Now, if you don't see a fragrance on this list that you think should be on this list, number one, I think you should go and check out the first installment of this video, because I did a video like this and there were a lot of designer fragrances on that list. It mixed in some niche as well, but there were a lot of designer fragrances on that list, so go and check that list out. And also, of course, these are my opinions. Fragrances is a very subjective hobby, and these are 10 fragrances that I do think really deserves that title for one, maybe even more than one reason or another. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, 10 masterpiece fragrances in my collection. Guys, as become customary here on the channel, I want to give you a quick style tip of the day, and that style tip is when it comes to the high heat, summertime especially, and you are a person like myself that either A, likes to dress up in suits and blazers, etc., or you have to dress up, then one thing that you want to keep in mind is the fabric of the material that you're wearing. I think I may have mentioned this one before, but it's worth saying it again. We're coming to the tail end of course, the summer season, but I think it's still worth mentioning. Type fabrics that you want to look to wear when it's hot outside are fabrics like cotton, linen, and a breathable wool material like I have one right here. It's called Hopsack. This material of this jacket is called, or the fabric of this jacket is called Hopsack. So it's a very breathable fabric, so it keeps you a lot cooler than the typical wool fabric will. So that's something that you want to keep in mind if you, again, like to dress up, or if you have to dress in this kind of attire in the summertime, it is good to really look at those type fabrics, because they will help to keep you cool in the summertime. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and move into this list of 10 fragrances that I consider to be masterpiece fragrances. So if you want to see what made the list, you know the routine. Keep it locked right here. All right, guys, we're back. Thank you so much for keeping it locked in. Let's go ahead and jump right into this video. Now, I want to start with a quick honorable mention. This fragrance is a designer fragrance from the house of Chanel, and this is Chanel Egoist. Now, while the original Egoist is a classic fragrance as well, this is definitely my favorite of the two. Oh, this is so good, man. And the reason I did it as an honorable mention, because there's a niche fragrance on this list that these fragrances kind of remind me of one another. So this is mostly a niche list. So I wanted to go ahead and throw this one in as an honorable mention, but this is definitely a masterpiece in my opinion. Some of the main notes in this, of course, sandalwood, tobacco, leather, cinnamon. Beautiful fragrance right here from the house of Chanel. It's such a classic. It was done by Jack Post in 1990. So it kind of has that old school classic kind of feel to it, but it's so good. It doesn't smell dated, and it's one that you can still rock today. This is for a gentleman. I don't think this is for the younger crowd, but if you are a gentleman, or consider yourself to be a gentleman, and you're over the age of 30, I think this is one that you must have in your collection. So take a look at this one from the house of Chanel. This is called Egoist. All right, guys, the first fragrance up on this list that is definitely a masterpiece. It really needs no introduction. As a matter of fact, most of these fragrances don't need an introduction. But this one comes from the house of Amouage, and this one is called Jubilation 25. Jubilation 25, and what an absolute masterpiece of a fragrance this is, man. I mean, as I always say, most of the fragrances from Amouage have such a long list of notes, but I will tell you a few of them that stick out to my nose. Definitely the honey, definitely the incense, the blackberry. There's some opopanax in here, I think, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Again, cinnamon. Any note that you probably could think of is probably in this fragrance, so it'll be pretty a safe guess to guess any note. But those are some of the main notes to my nose. But man, it's just a masterfully done fragrance. Celebratory is the mindset that I think about when I smell this thing. So I think it's so properly and appropriately named Jubilation 25. It's a celebratory scent. It is for special occasions, but it is a masterfully done fragrance from the house of Amouage, man. It's one that you definitely have to, at some point in your fragrance journey, put your nose on. It may not be for everybody, but it's masterfully done. So check it out. Again, this one is called Jubilation 25. All right, guys, the next fragrance on this list, this one comes from the house of Xerjoff. If you search through the Xerjoff catalog, you will probably find several masterpieces, and this is one of them. This is called Richwood. This is called Richwood. And guys, I will tell you right now, I did a video the other day about my top 10 Xerjoff fragrances, and unfortunately at the time, I did not have this. This is a newer acquisition to the collection, and that is thanks to today's sponsor, who is Twisted Lily. Guys, I tell you all the time, even when I talk about expensive fragrances that are more expensive, listen, my recommendation is that you at least go to a site like Twisted Lily and sample these fragrances first. I know they're expensive, but listen, if you want to be introduced to some, finer quality niche fragrances, the best way to do that is through sampling fragrances like this, because I really can tell you right now, I'm sure you will not be disappointed with this one. This is rose is the primary note in this. It's something powdery about this one as well. The dry down, you get a beautiful note of sandalwood in this as well. And man, this is just a masterfully done scent. Hands down a masterpiece. If I had this the other day when I did my top 10 fragrances from the house of Xerjoff, this would have probably been in the #1 spot. But again, at the time I did not have it. But it is that daggone good, man. This fragrance develops, it has a similar kind of complexity when I talk about 49s from Xerjoff. How it opens up one way, the mid changes, and then the dry down changes to something totally different. And I love this stuff. The dry down, you get a beautiful, sweet, warm dry down. Vanilla is the star player there. But man, I'm telling you, this stuff is an absolute masterpiece. So guys, I will have my discount code down below for Twisted Lily if you want to try this fragrance or any of the fragrances on this list. I think most of them may be there. Check out Twisted Lily. You'll get 10% off of your order if you use my code. And definitely, guys, give this one a sample. If you want to smell fine niche perfumery, then you need to put your nose on this one from the house of Xerjoff. This is called Richwood. All right, guys, the next fragrance on this list, in some people's minds, just like Creed Aventus, it's become somewhat of a victim of his own success, but nonetheless does not change the fact that it's a masterpiece from the house of MFK. This is called Baccarat Rouge 540, Extrait de Parfum. And again, when I talk about Aventus, I always speak about the fact that it was so popular that it spawned so many clones, and it was so popular that some people got tired of hearing about the fragrance. But that doesn't change the fact that it's a masterpiece, and that's why Creed Aventus, of course, was on the first list that I did of masterpiece fragrances in my collection. Now this one, in similar fashion to Creed Aventus, has spawned a lot of clones. Everybody wanted to copy the DNA of Baccarat Rouge 540. That's because when it was released, it was so unique, the first of its kind. And of course, when a fragrance comes out and is that popular and is that unique, there's going to be other fragrance houses that want to mimic the DNA. Always a sign of a masterfully done fragrance. So I don't need to talk about this one a lot. This one is certainly a fragrance that falls into that category of a masterpiece. So check it out from the house of Maison Francis Kurkdjian. This fragrance is called Baccarat Rouge 540. All right, guys, the next fragrance up on this list definitely deserves the title as well to be considered a masterpiece. And it's this one right here from the house of Creed. The one in the white bottle is called Silver Mountain Water. Silver Mountain Water. Now this fragrance has stood the test of time. It was released in the year of 1995, man. It is so good, and it is still good today. Again, always a testament of a fragrance that is worthy of the title of a masterpiece, in my opinion. When you can span the course of decades and still be relevant and is still considered to be a great fragrance, then that to me speaks for itself. But man, you know what this fragrance is, guys. It has that metallic vibe, and I really, really like it. It was a turn off for me initially when I smelled it, but man, when I put it on skin and went away, I had to come right back and turn around and get it, because it was really just at that time mind-blowing to me how good this fragrance was. Probably and still is my most complimented creed, although I will say a vintage cologne is on its tail, but man, just a masterfully done fragrance, man. Check it out if you haven't. For some reason at this point in your fragrance journey, this one is really good from the House of Creed. It's called Silver Mountain Water. All right, guys, the next fragrance on this list, man, look, Creation E made the first list, and this is definitely deserving to be on this installment of masterpiece fragrances in my collection, guys. Check this one out. This one from Rouge is called Sweetie Oud. Sweetie Oud. And I talked about this fragrance a few weeks ago. This is just so good, man. If you like gourmand scents, you gotta check this thing out. You just gotta check it out, man. It smells like baked goods that are freshly baking. You walk into a baking shop, a patisserie, and you smell cakes, pies, and pastries baking, and has a very kind of buttery accord for some reason, some way, somehow that's created in this fragrance. But man, this stuff is just good, man. This is a masterpiece in the genre, in my opinion, of gourmand scents. This is definitely a masterpiece, man. It's expensive, but again, if you can get a sample, just check it out. If you like gourmands, I think you'll love it. From the House of Rouge, this is called Sweetie Oud. All right, the next fragrance on the list, guys, we're going back to the House of Xerjoff, and this one's called 49s. I actually mentioned this fragrance a few moments ago when I talked about Richwood, and for the same reason, this fragrance is definitely one that needs to go in that category of a masterpiece, man. This thing changes from opening to close. The opening smells one way, the mid smells another way, and the dry down, you're gonna get something totally different. It goes from aquatic to green and spicy to resinous on the dry down, and a slightly powdery as well throughout the wearing. But man, a masterfully done fragrance from Xerjoff. Again, if you look through the Xerjoff catalog, you're gonna find, in my opinion, a few fragrances that are gonna fall in that category of a masterpiece, and this is one of them. So check it out when you get a chance from the House of Xerjoff. This is called 49s. All right, guys, the next fragrance on the list that to me is worthy of a title of a masterfully done fragrance, man, is this one from the House of YSL. It's called Tuxedo. This one's called Tuxedo, man. This is just a sexy scent right here. This thing is extremely sexy, man. You got that bourbon, vanilla, and patchouli on the dry down, and really, to me, that's where the magic is in this fragrance. Again, this is one that's talked about a lot, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But if you want a sexy fragrance, a masterfully done sexy fragrance, you gotta check this one out from the House of YSL. This is called Tuxedo. All right, guys, the next fragrance on this list, one of my absolute favorite fragrances in my collection from the House of Tom Ford. This is Oud Wood. Oud Wood, and it's definitely, in my opinion, again, deserving of that title as well. You get oud in here, man, but it's such a well done fragrance. It's such a balanced fragrance. Again, this is probably the date night king right here. You can do it date night, but you can also dress this fragrance up as well. It just smells absolutely fantastic. I love this stuff. It has oud, of course. It has vanilla. It has some sandalwood in here, a little bit of rose as it dries down as well. But man, this is just a masterfully done fragrance from Tom Ford. It gets an A+ across the board in my book. So check this one out. And this one, of course, is one of my favorites. It's called Oud Wood. All right, guys, the next fragrance on this list, this one comes from the House of Amouage. We're going back to the House of Amouage, and this one is called Reflection, man. Reflection, man. If you never put your nose on it, please do yourself a favor and put your nose on this. Don't listen to folks that say this smells like Lamel from Jean Paul Gaultier. No hit at all to Lamel, but this fragrance doesn't really smell like that much like Lamel to me. I mean, maybe 10, 15, 20% at the max. But this stuff is just so masterfully done, man. It's a very pure fragrance. And so reflection is I think the most appropriate word that you could use for this scent. It's so pure, so transparent, but it's so good. It's well done. It has white florals. Yang Ylang is in this. It has neroli, jasmine. Oh man! And the star play on the dry down, of course, is sandalwood. Man, just check this fragrance out. I absolutely adore this fragrance. One that I always have in my collection. If you talk about fragrances you feel like you can't live without, this is one of them for me. So definitely a masterpiece in its own right from the House of Amouage. This is called Reflection Man. All right, guys, and last but not least on this list, another fragrance that I think deserves the title of masterpiece. This one comes from the House of Frederic Malle, and this one is this Musk Ravageur. Musk Ravageur. Don't worry if you didn't see the first installment of this video. I will link it down below. I did talk about Portrait of a Lady, but this is another one from the house that I think deserves that title. Now again, this is not a fragrance that's going to be for everybody. It's very, very masculine. Musk, of course, and cinnamon are the main notes in this fragrance. It opens up very, very musky, spicy, and it dries down to a nice Cinnabon kind of dry down. And it is so good when it dries down. Oh man, this stuff is masculine, it's sexy, and it's good, and it deserves the title of a masterpiece. So put your nose on it if you can. From the House of Frederic Malle. Again, this is called Musk Ravageur. All right, guys, that's it. That's my time. I hope you enjoyed this video as I gave you 10 fragrances from my collection that I personally consider to be a masterpiece. As always, I appreciate your time and your attention to this video because, of course, you could have been anywhere else in the world. But, man, you took a few moments to watch, and I sincerely don't take that for granted. I appreciate it. Now, don't forget to take a few moments to go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. And share these videos out to some other folks that you think could use this information or find it entertaining, because I'm your guy, Darren the Bowtie Fragrance Guy. I love to look good, and of course, I love to smell amazing. So until next time, guys, keep looking good, keep smelling even better. I'll catch you on the flip side. Peace.